Howdy y'all, it's Cody from the Keepers of Nerddom. How you doing? So let's talk through one of the more interesting Star Trek films. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Was it bad? I think everybody that's ever watched this movie knows the answer. No. No, it's not bad. I think there are some minor things that, well, in logic ways could actually be bigger things, but the movie itself is paced well and has a fascinatingly fun story that just you can't help but smile at. You can't help but just go, this is everything I hoped it could be for a Star Trek film. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just go through the concepts of this film. The Enterprise crew is heading back from Vulcan after having, finally gotten Spock and restored him back to his body. And they're using the HMS Bounty, their Klingon bird of prey, to travel home. And Earth has a massive probe again, which that's a funny thing. The voyage home has a probe coming to Earth, causing problems and possibly going to destroy everything. It's very similar to the motion picture, which is just funny. Just an odd concept there, but really cool because this probe, while still destroying everything, is a little different, and it's looking for a specific thing. And of course, Spock figures out what nobody else can, is that this probe is looking for whales. And so they have a time travel thing to go back and get whales. So let's just talk through it. That's the reality of this film, the big plot device that humanity assumes that this probe is trying to talk to humans, and Spock's like, why would you assume that you're the only intelligent beings on this planet? Which is just kind of funny. But also, the odd thing here again is, why doesn't this probe thing get picked up way sooner in the film? It's kind of like one of those, in ways, minor things, but also kind of a big deal, because when you stop to think about it, you're like, yeah, that's true. Why didn't anybody know this was coming a lot sooner than where we see it? Because this thing is massive. It is just a big old... And that's the other thing. That's a funny thing. Oh, excuse me. That's the other funny thing about this film is Voyager is such a crazy concept, and then once you see it in the director's cut, I don't remember if it was in the original or not from the motion picture. Man, I don't think it was when I watched it as a kid, but maybe I just didn't. I don't remember it. But this probe is so, I don't know if derpy is the right word, but interesting. Like the ball hanging down from the thing of light is interesting, but the rest of it is just like, here's a cylinder. It's just funny. But yeah, it's trying to talk to the whales, and it's destroying everything on Earth because there's no whales. So the Enterprise crew has to go back in time because the whales were wiped out. And it's kind of one of those movies about preserve things and take care of what you've been given, which is not a bad message by any means. So let's continue on. I think one of the best parts of the film is an excuse to put the Enterprise crew back in the 70s, 80s, basically, I guess 80s at that point, and just let them be in this era. It's so funny, it's ridiculous and hilarious. Spock pointing out the colorful metaphors that are being used by the guy on the bus. Man, poor Chekhov. Walter Koenig just had a rough he always gets the crazy derpy parts, and I love though that they're like, they didn't even think to have the logic of, hey, maybe during the 80s you shouldn't have a Russian walking around asking for nuclear vessels. You're like, that's how you get the FBI called on you real fast. But anyway, Uhura is just fascinatingly clever in this. Sulu's just like, I'm gonna learn how to fly, and then somehow gets permission to fly a helicopter. Like, okay. Man, Kirk and Spock obviously are finding the whales, and the best part, other than Kirk and Spock, are Scotty and McCoy trying to find a place that they can get the materials they need for building enclosures for whales on their bird of prey, which is just hilarious. Like, what in the world craziness is this? And I think that's the funny thing about this movie. I don't know. It's not that you should turn your brain off and just enjoy it. Because it does actually have a plot, and but it's cornier in a way, and it's almost self-deprecating on purpose, and it makes it funny that you can just laugh at points. But there is obviously just weird pieces to this. There would be a manhunt and a half over Chekhov in the hospital after he gets injured from jumping off the nuclear vessel, right? It's just stuff like that. But man, it's just one of those clever films. We also have the whale scientist. I can't even remember her name. I just watched this movie, and it's another one of these like love interest for Captain Kirk. And this is why we have this silly, crazy concept always from the original series and the movies, that Kirk is the ladies' man, is stuff like this, where he just smiles at the lady, and all of a sudden the lady's like, "Oh, you're amazing." And it's just ridiculous because Spock's being a weird dude during that entire whole interactions at all, and Kirk's still able to get the girl. And you're like, she even makes lighthearted jokes about, "I'm pretty sure you guys are going to mug me and take all my stuff," and then still picks them up and takes them places. And you're like, no, you don't do this. Like, this is a terrible idea. You have a crazy person that jumped in the tank with the whales. Don't go on a date with the guy that was walking around with this dude. That's bizarre. It's just it's a funny trope in a way with Kirk, but it's also like, when you stop to think about it, you go, this shouldn't work right here. But she's an interesting character herself because she cares about these two whales, George and Gracie. I think so. I think that's their names, the whales. And Spock gets to communicate with them too in the whale tank, and finds out that Gracie's pregnant, and they're willing to actually go along and do this because then they could actually survive, because nobody's going to hunt them in the 23rd century at this point? I think so, for the Star Trek in their future. Yeah, because TNG is 24th. All right, so she's an interesting. I just had to include this guy because he's just the funny, colorful metaphors and all that stuff, and just ridiculous. The punk rocker on the bus, and Spock relearning about Vulcan, and his Vulcan. What would you say that is, the like humanity and his Vulcanistic tendencies, and Spock's trying to blend in, but he's struggling, obviously, because he's brand new to his head and body again. But yeah, this guy was just a great part of the film. The visuals of the bird of prey in this film, my gosh, like, what a miniature, and what a clever way to give you the size comparison against a fishing boat. Obviously, is a bird of prey very big? No, but this gives you the concept of size with something in at the time, the modern era. And man, I would just assume that would have to both be, obviously the bird of prey is a miniature, and unless they did some sort of camera trickery, that boat would be a miniature as well. But if so, I'm impressed, right? Like, that's amazing. I'd have to look it up, but it's you want to see the Enterprise crew on the Enterprise, but because they were just having a continuous story through these films for these characters, which I appreciate, because the TNG movies don't do that like these films did with Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, The Voyage Home, especially those three, where it's a three-part story that's moving plot along. Not every part of it is obviously as good as the others, but it is a story that is hand in hand, with each other. And that Klingon bird of prey, my goodness, it is something special, truly is. And it stands out not just because we've seen it, in the previous film, but this gives you a special place in your heart for the bird of prey in a very different way. And I think that's really interesting. All right. Lastly, here, actually, I can't even remember right now. My goodness. Time travel is just this easy that even a Spock who is just making guesses is going to get them right back to where they need to go. It's kind of stupidly silly. And I appreciate that in TNG and on, time travel is so much less of we're not just going to go around the sun. Like, I don't know if TNG ever has that. And it's like the original series, they're just like, oh, we're going to time travel. It's like, good gracious. If it was this easy, everybody would obviously do it. And the Federation wouldn't exist. No civilizations would exist because they'd wipe each other out, or one would, right? That one over all the others before the others did it to themselves, right? It's like the Borg in First Contact. Like, that would happen and it would be successful. So just crazy things whenever you could just travel around the sun, because there's not going to be a temporal wake in the same way as opening a time portal like First Contact had. Interesting thing, I believe his name is Admiral Cartwright, the guy in the middle. That's the president on the right, and then we have a different president a little bit later in some of the films. But Starfleet is definitely an interesting whole piece that it's kind of fascinating that they're starting to realize in this film, before the Enterprise crew travels back in time, like, we're on the edge of probably extinction on planet Earth because this probe is just destroying everything. And they're running out of power. The emergency power is failing. Just a fascinating take on Starfleet. I love also that this guy just has a headset with a wire still on it. Haven't quite gotten a wireless technology for everything, but just a fun concept. So Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, was it bad? No, it wasn't. Is it a movie trying to take itself very seriously? Absolutely not. I think in ways it's one of those films that just, it's almost like they wanted you to put your feet up and relax and enjoy the heart of Star Trek, of trying to save someone else with clever shenanigans. It's crazy. It's nuts as all get out, but it's also because of the craziness of time travel. It's fun. And the original series had a lot of time travel stuff where it made for some pretty interesting adventures, that's for sure. One thing I forgot to mention though too, I love Scotty trying to talk to a computer, and then the guy that's running this production plant's like, use the mouse, and McCoy hands him the mouse, and then he tries to talk into the mouse, and the guy's like, use the keyboard. Scotty is like ticked off, which is so funny. And then he gives this guy the recipe for transparent aluminum, which now we've actually created, which is crazy. It's so amazing how sometimes Star Trek becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. So cool. But anyway, just amazing with that he creates this in a roundabout way because Scotty gives it to this guy, and then McCoy's like, should we be doing that? And Scotty just goes, who knows if he's not the one that created it? I'm like, oh my gosh. I appreciate that line in the film, like that moment, because Bones also just shrugs like, okay, maybe. And you're like, are you kidding me right now? But they play it off as just like, I don't know how else we're going to get this stuff, basically. And it's terrible. Like, it is so bad. But it's also just Scotty. Like, Scotty's going to make whatever he can find work and make it function and get what he needs to have happen, so that way, in essence, always, the ship is ready to go. And I think that's what I appreciate about Scotty. But what is funny to me is that McCoy doesn't really like try to put his foot down on any of this. Because normally, if it was Spock, he would be like, no. And even with Kirk, he'd be like, no. But apparently with Scotty, Scotty and McCoy are drinking buddies or something because they're fine with each other. And Bones is like, okay. You're like, that's kind of a big deal, man. That's a huge deal. You could be changing the entire timeline. And basically, from what we see in the film, everything's fine when they get back and they help Starfleet save the day. So apparently, no, this was the guy that actually invented transparent aluminum in the 80s. And you're like, so you picked one guy at a production plant and it just happened to be the right guy. Okay. It's one of those you just have to go, oh boy. But it's in line with Scotty's character, but it's not necessarily in line with Bones' character. I would just say that. So yeah, Scotty's going to make sure that the ship is ready to go. And I think that's the interesting thing. I appreciate there was which one of the movies that Kirk finally questioned Scotty on. Scotty, do you always add a couple hours to your estimates on repairs? Scotty just goes, well, how else would I be a miracle worker? And then it's so funny because in TNG, the episode where Scotty is back, he mentions that to Geordi, like, always double what your estimate is so that way you're the miracle worker. I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Scotty has just always been lying about stuff just to make sure everybody's like, he's the best. I think in ways that's why I like Scotty in the original series and the movies. And especially in the TNG episode, he's gonna make sure the ship goes. And he's gonna be the one that is acknowledged as the best that's ever been. And that is Scotty, and it always will be. Sorry, I get distracted because Scotty's like one of my favorite characters from the original series other than Spock. So that's funny though. I don't know. It gets hard because Spock, Scotty, and then Chekhov. They're usually my three favorite characters in the original series. But out of curiosity, what are yours, and what do you think of Star Trek 4? Is it bad to you? Is it really good? What makes it good? What makes it bad? I think overall it's one of those that I can't help but smile in, and overall, other than time travel always being messy, it's one of those that works pretty well. Is it silly and cheesy that they're going to the past to save whales to communicate with a probe? Sure, it is. It really is. But you're like, you know what? That somehow just is the most original series concept ever, other than the motion picture concept too. Like the motion picture and the Voyage Home truly are, to me, original series episodes, just bigger budgets. You know what I mean? You can agree with that or not. Let me know down in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I've been Cody from the Keepers of Nerddom. Take care, y'all. Bye.